last video for the night, and I need to get ready to go to bed because I went to like 3 movies last night. Didn't get home till like almost 4 a.m. yesterday, and then I'm up at 11 o'clock shooting videos. So yay! Steven Universe, whatever episodes these are. Episode the first, we're talking about another 2 episodes this week. You know what's really cool is here's disc 1 of season 2, disc 2, and then we start season 3. So next week I'm finishing the last 2 episodes of disc 1 of season 2, and then I move on to the last few episodes of season 2, and then we move on to season 3. Moving through this show quicker than I thought, but we still won't be finished till like late next year with this show, which I am fine with because I'm still enjoying reviewing the show, and actually I'm getting more into it as I get further into this review series. We Need to Talk is one of the best episodes of Steven Universe. In fact, let me talk about the first one of these, the second one of these episodes first, just because We Need to Talk is the more important episode, and I think I have a lot more to say about. Chili Deed is not an episode I like revisiting for a couple reasons. I really don't like the Malachite and Lapis arc. I think it's just... What I don't like about this episode is basically the concept of this episode is Steven introduces the gems to the concept of sleep, and the gems sleep because they're just exhausted from searching for Malachite. And Steven ends up having his dream powers kick in and sees Malachite under the ocean in his dreams and tries to help Lapis free, and there's no resolution on that episode. And that's part of the reason I don't like this episode. It ends on a joke with no resolution. Like, Steven is clearly dealing with trauma, and it kind of seems... I know we see more of that in future about how the gems blow off his trauma, but it's makes this episode not fun to revisit knowing that. Makes a lot of these episodes actually not fun to revisit, but this one in particular. Also, I don't like the weird TV show black and white thing that they were going with. And I think it's lazy writing. Not lazy writing, I guess kind of some bad writing is the better way of phrasing it, on the Crewniverse's part to show... I hate to say it like this, but not trying to be disrespectful to them, but like, I really don't like how much they portray Lapis as the victim in this episode, because she is actively, she's like, oh, I'm doing this for Steven to protect him. Like, that seems the way her dialogue is phrased from Keep Jasper Down, but like, we learn later that she was abusive in this relationship, and she was the aggressor, and not always completely Jasper. But in a lot of ways, she's portrayed as the victim, and that's not really fun. I don't know if it's fully that way, but that's just the vibe I get off from some of her dialogue, and I just don't like it. It's not fun to revisit. Lapis is really... And Jasper was a really fun character in season 3 when she was like a week-to-week villain doing villainous shit. That was kind of fun. But really, Lapis is just not a fun character to revisit. Jasper isn't either because, like I said, I enjoyed when she was a week-to-week villain, but her character arc never really got resolved properly, and that sucks. And I saw so many fan theories back in the day while the show was airing about, oh, maybe Jasper will do this or Jasper will do that, and she never did any of these things. And it's like, when your fans are coming up with better storylines than you guys at times, maybe it's time that we realize that maybe the Crewniverse kind of screwed up in some places. And some of it wasn't their fault, but a lot of it was at times. I don't know. Next episode, though, We Need to Talk, is such a wonderful episode. Basically, this episode is another flashback. Greg finds out Steven and Connie can fuse, and he tells a story about how him and Rose used to fuse and did it unsuccessfully. Steven and Connie listen to the story, and this story is beautiful because Greg and Rose sing the song, and you can very tell, she's like, oh, human man, I like playing along and watching the way humans beings play. That is the way she views humans. It's very much implied here, which I never realized, that Rose fucked around with other humans. Like, now, I don't know if she literally, you know, you know, but she clearly messed around with other humans. Maybe they loved her, but she didn't really reciprocate those feelings, and maybe hurt other humans purposely or not. But Rose wasn't the best person because she. Maybe it's because the fact that where she came from, she was literally royalty and given everything, and so she doesn't really. A lot of people like that who have power, money, and not this case literal money, but um, tend to lack empathy sometimes, and it's hard for them to relate to others. A lot of rich people be like that. So, or not rich people, but powerful people, and so maybe that's the way she was. I mean, she also was trained to believe their gems were beneath her, and maybe she was able to learn that about maybe that gems weren't fully beneath her, but I think part of that is ingrained in her still. So because at the end of the day, some of the way she treats Garnet and other people is unempathetic. So Greg wants to fuse with Rose because Pearl kind of is pissy and is like, hey, you'll never be able to fuse. And that's really important to her. And so Greg tries. Of course, Pearl was never going to help. But Garnet agrees to help her, or help him. He does. I think from Garnet's point of view, I don't think she ever actually thought Greg could fuse with Rose, because Garnet says something to Pearl. She's like, why are they dancing? I don't think it will work. And Garnet responds, yes, it did. And I think she knew the end result, or at least saw some point of view in the end result of the future vision showing her. And I was like, okay, so it's kind of an interesting thing to think about with that. I really like that idea there. But Greg tries to fuse with Rose. It didn't work. And Greg's broken hearted about this. But Rose is just laughing at him while he's explaining all these things. And he finally just says, Rose, can we please talk like a real person? And she's like, I'm not a real person. Because she's an alien. And Greg and her exchange some amazing dialogue that I don't even want to say in this video because I didn't write it down, for one. Second, it's just amazing dialogue. These two characters talking the way they do together is just so fucking amazing and truly beautiful. Rose and Greg are like what Greg says in this episode. They really are different. But when you examine their characters, they're really not that different. They're both people who grew up in abusive households. In Rose's case, her sisters, I guess you would, I mean, not literal sisters, but you know what I mean. They're basically her sisters. Were abusive assholes. Because they were put in a system that made them that way, I guess, or I don't know how to fully explain what the diamonds were, but you get the point. It was an abusive system. It was a cycle that wasn't normal, wasn't right, and she had to learn to leave that behind. And I don't think Rose is fully honest when she says she doesn't miss it, because I think she does. But I think, she's thinking about her past. And I think Rose does have a lot of regrets about the way things went down, but because that was her family. But I think what's interesting, is Greg also grew up in an abusive household, in the sense that it's very much implied that Greg's parents were conservative parents who try to control him and tell him how to be and what he should be. And as someone who grew up in a similar situation where, I grew up in a church life, people tried to tell me who I wanted to be. I grew up with some more conservative parents. I'm not saying my parents are bad people, but I'm just saying, I've grown up in situations like that. People who try to control me, tell me how I should be, try to control my life, it's not fun. And so part of you wants to do what Greg did and rebel and leave and get the fuck out of there. You know, I don't think Greg would have handled it correctly. Like, I would never do what Greg did. Not fully, anyways. But, you know, these are both people who left everything they knew behind and they found each other. And they're now having to struggle with what it means to be in love for the first time because, you know, they both say that they've been with other people, but it's not love like what they have currently. I think it's so interesting the way everything kind of came together with all this. And it's really special. It's just such a great episode. So, yeah, I know this was a long review. Didn't expect that me talk this long in this video. But honestly, that's the power of this episode. It is my favorite episode of season 2 so far. I don't know if it's still going to be my favorite by the end of the season. Probably will. But, yeah, let me know your thoughts. Like, share, and subscribe.